I would say that two things. I think you've referenced the previous case. I'd say this is very different from the previous case in terms of the scale and the overall effect on the building itself. I would agree with Ms. Fuller-Wilt that the appearance of the columns they're different in proportion. I would also say, as an architect who's done a lot of historic preservation, that I know that there are ways to replicate exactly a column. In fact, much more complicated columns, elaborate columns than this with plaster molds. So it's technically feasible to do it, but this isn't the way that you would do that. This is buying a stock column and trying to get the closest thing to the original column. It's a more complicated process to actually replicate a column in fiberglass, but it's a common thing to do. It's just more complex. With that, those are just my comments. Are there any other comments before I ask for a motion? Anything else that you'd like to say? Did I have a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'd like to make a motion for certificate of design approval for 3112 Amherst Avenue, that the applicant be allowed to replace both columns with the Worthington sketch as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
A vote?
Mr. Bognight?
Yes.
Mr. Broom?
Yes.
Ms. Fuller-Wilt?
Yes.
Ms. Great?
Yes.
Mr. Heiler?
Yes.
Mr. Savory?
No.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next case, please.
This is 1132 to 1136 Woodrow Street. Request for certificate of design approval for demolition in the Melrose Heights Oak Lawn Architectural Conservation District. This is a circa 1920s one-story wood frame craftsman bungalow house that was originally constructed as a single-family home but has since been converted into a triplex. The conversion resulted in additions to the back of the property and the enclosure of the original wraparound front porch for additional square footage on the interior. The original front door, a 5-panel, 1-light door surrounded by 3-light side light, and a 4-light transom is still in place and visible at the recessed entry at the front of the facade. The house is on a large corner lot at Woodrow and Bratton Streets. The applicant is requesting demolition so that the lot may be divided for the construction of 2 new single-family homes. Section 17-674E of the city ordinance lists criteria used as a guideline for the DDRC and staff for review of all requests for demolition permits. Criteria 1 states the historic or architectural significance of a building, structure, or object. The house was built in 1920s, which is well within the period of significance for the Melrose Heights neighborhood. The design features of the house are in keeping with the patterns of the neighborhood, such as the use of the craftsman bungalow style, which is found throughout the district. And despite the changes to the exterior, the overall original form of the building is still clearly discernible, and many of the original features of the house remain intact. Criteria 2 is a determination of whether the subject property is capable of earning a reasonable economic return on its value without the demolition, with consideration being given to economic impact to the property owner of the subject property. The house seems capable of earning a reasonable economic return on its value. All 3 units of the house are currently occupied by renters. Melrose Heights is a very popular neighborhood for renters and single-family ownership, with home values steadily rising. Comparable sized houses within a couple blocks of this house have sold for over $260,000 in recent years. And should money be invested into the house for repairs, it is likely that the resulting increased value of the home would offer a reasonable economic return. There's also a possibility that the lot could be divided if later additions on the back of that building were removed. If this is undertaken, a new single-family home could be built on the back lot facing Bratton Street, which could be sold for an economic return. Additionally, this property is listed as a contributing property to the Melrose Heights Oak Lawn Fairview National Register Historic District, which means that it may be eligible for tax credits, which would lessen the economic burden of any needed repairs, and the house is also a good candidate for the Bailey Bill. Criteria 3 is the importance of the building structure or object to the ambience of the district. The building contributes to the ambience of the district as a contributing building that fits within the overall patterns of the neighborhood. Similar houses historic houses along the street share a similar idea of setback, massing, and scale that all contribute to cohesive feeling along the street. Criteria 4 is whether the building, structure, or object is one of the last remaining examples of its kind in the neighborhood, city, or region. It is not the last remaining example of its kind. Criteria 5 is whether there are definite plans for reuse of the property if the proposed demolition is carried out, and what the effect of those plans on the character of the surrounding area would be. The request for demolition is driven by the desire to divide the lot into 2 parcels for 2 new single-family houses, one facing Bratton Street and one facing Woodrow. It is likely that the lot could be subdivided if the back additions of the house were removed. This would preserve the historic house and the historic character of the street while also allowing for growth within the district. The applicant has supplied renderings of potential houses for these lots. The designs provided were approved by past DDRC to be on Haygood Avenue, which is also within the Melrose Heights district. The proposed houses are generally compatible with the historic homes of the area, and those examples are included within your packets. Criteria 6 is the existing structural condition, history of maintenance, and use of the property, whether it endangers public safety, and whether the city is requiring its demolition. The applicant has provided an inspection report from 2004 when the property was first purchased, and an inspection from 2017. Items mentioned on the report from 2004, such as water damage under the bathrooms and the presence of termites, are also mentioned in the report from 2017. It is unclear whether or not any action has been taken in the last 14 years to make repairs that were recommended in the report from 2004, since the only permit on record for the interior is for interior repairs in 2013. The house is currently fully occupied in all 3 rental units, and while repairs are likely needed, any structural issues with the building do not appear to be of imminent danger to the occupants. The building does not endanger public safety, and the city is not requiring demolition. Criteria 7 is whether the building or structure is able to be relocated and whether a site for relocation is available. While the building may be structurally capable of relocation, it is not currently a consideration for this building. And finally, criteria 8 is whether the building or structure is under orders from the city to be demolished due to severe structural deficiency, and the building is not under orders from the city to be demolished. So for staff recommendation, staff finds that the building retains historic and architectural integrity, contributes to the ambience of the district, generally appears to be structurally sound, would likely be able to provide a reasonable economic return, and is not under orders from the city to be demolished as per Section 9 of the guidelines and Section 17-674E of the city ordinance. Therefore, staff recommends denial of the request for demolition. These are some images provided by the applicant that show the back additions a little bit clearer than the images that originally were included in your packet. This is some of the area behind the house where the lot would be subdivided. An example of what that subdivision would look like. And that is it. Do you have any questions for staff?
No?
I have a question for you. There's 3 rental properties in the house?
The house is currently used as a triplex, yes. There's 2 that are in the front main part of the house, and then 1 that is mainly in the addition part of the house.
Any more questions for staff? The applicant wish to speak? You've been sworn in? I have. State your name when you get to the microphone, please.
Mr. Chairman, my name is John Blackman. I'm the agent for the property owners. If we could go back through these pictures. Actually, if you could go back to the top view. Yes. If y'all will notice the very center part, there are 2 chimneys, and it's a rectangle. That rectangle is 45 feet wide on Woodrow and 33 feet deep. That was the original house. 1,465 square feet. If anybody's ever followed the history of Melrose Heights, they know what happened when Camp Jackson got started. All these houses got added on to. All these single-family houses went to duplexes and triplexes and quadruplexes. Same with this piece of property. Now, if we could start back with, okay, that's an addition to the original house. The two fronts now hold the kitchens for two of the apartments, complete with the sloped porch in the kitchen. Next picture, this is part of enclosed porch. Next picture, another addition that staff has said can come down. And next picture, another addition staff has said to come down. These two pictures, these are the only 4 windows that you can see from the original house. If you look at every other window in every other picture, they're 3/1. These are solid pane windows. These are the only 4 windows in the house. You can't, and I'm sorry, staff, but you can't tell what this house looks like. You can't tell what this house was intended to look like. Y'all seen the pictures? Do they have the pictures of the substructure? The house is rented, one unit is occupied by a guy that lives somewhere else who comes to practice his drums there and pays $250 a month. The 3 units together are $1,000 a month. Melrose Heights is a lot better neighborhood than this. The substructure of this house, Clark's Termites, wants $63,000 to rebuild the underneath. I've had several contractors go over and say, can you give me a price on fixing this house? And they just kind of giggled. There's so many things wrong with this house that you're going to end up spending $250,000 fixing up what started out as a 1,450 square foot house. It doesn't make good economic sense when you've got 2 lots there. People bought it originally to cut it into 2 lots. Before they had a chance to do it, you know, they had tenants in there, they didn't do anything to it. Before they had a chance to do it, the rules changed. So, you know, and the market crashed. So they, you know, you ever heard somebody wanted to make some money in real estate? They couldn't. But now they want to try again, and they want to tear the house down, and they want to put up, or have somebody put up 2 nice single-family houses that go with the neighborhood. And we know that we have to get them approved design-wise, so we don't have any problem with that. We just ask that y'all let us tear this aging dinosaur down. Also, and I understand, I spent 8 years on the City Columbia Planning Commission. I like historical things, but the 8th wonder of the world, Houston Astrodome got torn down. So we can't save, and shouldn't save every structure. Thank you for your time, and I'd like for you to approve this. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody who is opposed or in favor of this application? Opposed? And you've been sworn in?
I have. Thank you.
And state your name when you get there.
I'm Martha Fowler. I live in Melrose. I'm on the executive committee for the Melrose Heights Neighborhood Association. Our executive committee was asked by the property owner to go and look at the property to help them make their case. We spent a good amount of time. We then went into executive session, and we voted unanimously in support of staff that the house is a contributing house. It should be made better. The fact that they have not treated it for termites and have not taken care of proper things that should have been taken care of, is not a case for tearing it down. Demolition by neglect is not something that should be rewarded. I have texts from the other members of my committee that ask me to speak for them. If you will take my word for it, that's fine. If not, I'll be happy to send you the text. They had planned to be here and got held up at work. But we unanimously voted to support the staff that the house should not be demolished. It is a contributing structure, and it has been a contributing structure for a long time. It does have some problems, and I'm surprised really that code enforcement has not been there to take care of those problems over the years. But it's demolition by neglect is not to be rewarded. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have a letter from a resident that's on the record, or how does that work?
The letter was sent after evaluations went out, so I provided you with a copy so you're aware.
Opposed to the demolition?
Yes.
Anybody else in the audience that's in favor or opposed? Yes, you do. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Again, if you look at this picture, you can't say it's a contributing house to the neighborhood because the house that exists there doesn't look like this.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
When were the additions done? What year?
Since 1920. I mean, if you
If you look at this Sanborn map from 1956, the porch is still open and there aren't any additions on the back. So sometime after 1956. Also like to clarify, I don't believe those windows are older than the 50s or 60s, so it's likely that those were reused from the house after the porch was enclosed. So just to say that those are original features.
Can I ask a question too about this picture? I thought this is the front of the house, right?
correct.
Okay, somewhere I heard the kitchens were on the front. Okay, okay.
They are.
But that is the entrance to the house.
But nobody goes in that entrance. The entrance for the apartment on the left is off of Bratton Street. The entrance from the apartment on the right is from the driveway, and the entrance from the back unit is from the back.
Okay, I heard that part. Okay, thank you.
Nobody's living on the premises? Nobody's living on the premises?
Somebody's living in the left unit, and somebody's living in the back unit. There's nobody living in the right unit, although it is rented to a drummer.
I'm looking at,
Can you show the pictures of the
I'm sorry.
substructure?
We did. We had that in our packet.
Okay. I mean, take a look at those. These people bought this thing in 2004. It looked like that then. You know, if you've ever been under an old house, and Melrose Heights is famous for having houses built low to the ground, a lot of moist soil, and a lot of termite damage throughout Melrose Heights.
So they've owned it for 13 years?
Yeah.
But go ahead. But that sort of leads in, I think, to the real issue here is the property was purchased some period of time ago. As part of the purchase, they had an evaluation done by someone who found pre-existing problems with the structure.
And their intention at the time, at that point, was to cut it, tear it down, and put 2 lots there.
Okay. But subsequent to that, he's continued to rent the properties, and then subsequently, he has gotten a new evaluation which goes into more detail than the early one, but it basically references the same issues that were raised before. So I follow up again with, this is to me a demolition by neglect issue, that he is benefiting by the fact that he's had this property rented for this period of time. He's made no improvements to cure the problems, so the cost of the improvements have continued to go up. And it's my experience as a commercial real estate broker that cost estimates from termite companies are historically higher than what a typical contractor is going to charge. Granted, when you deal underneath the house, you never know till you get started. But that would be my concern, that this has gone on way too long, and now he's asking us to allow him to tear it down, and has not fixed.
He tried to tear it down right after they first bought it, but the historical guidelines had been in place, and he couldn't do it then. And then the market crashed, and he
But Mr. Blackman, he could have made the same arguments then that he's making now, that here's my report from 2004, these are the issues, because of that, I want to tear it down and do such and such. And here we are 14 years later at the same step, nothing's been done, the property has continued to deteriorate because of his failure to address the issues, and now you want us to be allowed to tear it down. I mean, it's
And to the point of providing a reasonable economic return, I think an argument could also be made that the average price per square foot of homes in Melrose Heights has continued to increase over the past 13 years. So this home could be
I
renovated.
have sold more houses in Melrose Heights than any other real estate agent in Columbia.
That's a bold statement.
I'm very familiar with the values.
So I could make an argument that based on the basis he has in the home, that it could be converted and renovated and an economic return still be received from the house.
I think it's difficult not to make that argument, honestly.
Yeah.
I think that's sort of a obvious conclusion. A profit could be made. Ms. Fuller-Wilt, you had a comment?
I don't remember it anymore.
Sorry.
Well, then, we would like approval to tear all additions down, save for the 4533 original structure.
What we're going to make a decision about is your original request for wholesale demolition. You would have to come back with proposing something else in another application, but we have to take the application as it is now and vote on that.
And demolition of non-original, or, parts of the house could be handled at staff level.
I could, okay.
Yes.
Any other comments?
Actually, I do have a question for staff about that. So, assuming that the non-original portions are demolished, a new facade has got to be constructed. Would that be approved at staff level, or would that have to come back to us?
Demolishing any non-original part of the house could be handled at staff level. If they, are you asking if they choose to open the porch up again?
Well, I guess what I'm thinking here is if you demolish the non-original portions, there's no exterior skin left, and so at that point you just have studs. So what are they actually going to have?
The
wrong?
additions at the back, I believe, are what he's referencing.
Okay.
These parts back here are not original.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yes.
All
I mean,
right.
you would have to build back a back wall.
Sure.
But that could be handled at staff level.
Okay.
And let me ask Mr. Blackman, this lot is 161 feet deep, I guess, so...
160, 91
So you need 50 feet minimum to be able to build a new house. So if you tear down these additions, do you have that amount of room?
Correct. We'll actually have a 75 by 91 foot lot.
I believe a gentleman in the public wanted to, was asking.
Thank you.
Were you sworn in?
Yes, I was.
Please state your name when you get to the
Yes,
microphone,
I'm
please.
Robert Davis. I'm one of the owners of the property, and I want to defend the fact that we have done numerous repairs over the last 14 years. Heating systems, air conditioning systems, hot water heaters, numerous plumbing issues, pipes that were buried underground because when that house was built, there was no apron around it. It was built on pillars and you could crawl through it. When they built houses back then, they didn't hang plumbing under the floor like we all know our plumbing is. They buried it. So when there was a leak, there was a water shooting out of the ground underneath. Those pipes had to be dug up and repaired. Have I replaced all the plumbing? Absolutely not. I wouldn't even guess what was in there originally. We've replaced heating system, air conditioning system. We did do some repairs on a bathroom floor. As was mentioned, one of the tenants has not lived there for 5 years, but because it's so cheap, he wants to store his stuff there and he wants to come over and play his drums. other tenants, $260 a month. Of course he doesn't want to move. Of course he doesn't call us to do repairs. He doesn't want to have to move. There was actually additions that were added. It's hard to tell what was added. You can look at the roof line, you can see the rafter tails, and you can guess, well, that roof went all the way around. But that was a complete front porch that we looked at on that Woodrow Street elevation. Now it's kitchens. You look under the house, and it was built with bricks, stacked up with 2x4s, stuck in the ground, and yes, they're termite. Where do you start renovating, and where do you stop doing repairs? We wanted to tear it down because of the value of the two lots. And we've been back to our attorney. No one told us about the restrictions. Our attorney was going to let us know if it was in a floodplain, if there were any easements, if there were any sort of issues with it. Never did he say, well, it's in a historic district. That's a major issue. It was going to be torn down. We've been back to talk to him. He said, well, I don't know where you would find that. If I researched the property today, where you would find that designation. And what, you know, the downfall of having that. But I wanted to defend the fact that we've done repairs. Our insurance, our taxes, it eats everything up. We're only getting $1,000 a month. It costs us $1,400 a month to pay insurance and pay taxes. It's time to do something with it.
Mr. Davis, I'm sorry, go ahead and finish, I'm sorry.
I will never renovate that. I would never undertake that task. Now, somebody may, we haven't found them. Everybody we've gone to, very reputable contractors, very reputable real estate investors, flippers, they say, get me a demolition permit and I'll buy it. They just don't want to do it. They say, one of the major renovators here in Columbia, he said, Bob, I can build you twice as much house for half the money than renovating it. And so, you know, you're asking to do repairs on the foundation. Well, where do you put the new supports? Depends on what you're going to do upstairs. So repairs have been done and to keep it rented. But we're not going to renovate it under any circumstances. So.
Can I ask staff, when were the Melrose Heights guidelines put in place? This property was purchased in 2004.
The guidelines went into place in 2003.
I'm sorry?
2003?
2003.
But to be able to put the guidelines in place, the way it's typically handled is notice goes out to property owners, discussions are held, decisions are made, it's passed by city council, which is noted of record, and then the repairs you have discussed that you made sounds like basically the repairs, kitchen, HVAC, plumbing, that you need to make to keep a property rentable. The issues that I think you're facing underneath the house with the supports and the termites don't stop you from renting the house.
No, they don't.
But so the issues you've dealt with is the issues that a landlord has to deal with in order to be able to rent a house.
That's right.
So from 2004 to today, the issues that aren't seen by residents have been left alone, and you're back wanting to tear it down. So, I mean, I think we're back to the demolition by neglect, I'm sorry to say.
Okay, well, I've said.
Thank you. I would add that I would reinforce that. These owners have owned this house for 14 years and bought it after the neighborhood was a protected district. I think this is a classic case of going down the road of demolition by neglect. I don't see how you get around that. Repairs, the same issues that were in the original inspection in 2004 are showing up again in 2017. I myself own a 1925 bungalow, and I know the headache of continual repair of bungalows from the 1920s. I don't see how an argument can be made that this is not contributing to the neighborhood. To me, it clearly is, and I don't think I'm in agreement with Mr. Heiler that you can make a credible case that there's no way to gain a return on investment. I don't think that you can make the argument that that's not possible. I think it's hard for me to imagine how we find an exception to the guidelines in order to not have that set a precedent for further requests to demolish properties in historic neighborhoods. Any other comments?
Miss Brown, the lady we bought it from, her husband grew up in that house.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments from commissioners?
I'll make a motion. We're ready for that. Like to make a motion for the denial of the request for demolition for 1132 and 1136 Woodrow Street per sections 9 of the guideline.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Could you also, oh, sorry.
A lot of conversations about capable of earning a reasonable return, but that's just one of the components that we use. We have to use, all 8 of them. And so my only comment would be that, as I review it, I'm looking at the majority of those 8, not just that particular one, for the applicant as well, to know that we don't focus on one particular part of
Absolutely.
it.
I just wanted to clarify that there's also section 17-674E of the city ordinance, where the criteria are.
Yeah, great.
Any other discussion or any other amendments that we want to make to the motion before voting? And we'll add that piece to the motion.
Yes.
Ready for a vote?
Mr. Bachnight?
Yes.
Mr. Broom?
Yes.
Mr. Daniel?
Yes.
Ms. Fuller-Wilt?
Yes.
Ms. Great?
Yes.
Mr. Hyler?
Yes.
Mr. Savory?
Yes.
Motion passes.
And I believe that's the last case. We have further business?
We do. We are going to hold elections for chair and vice chair this evening. What we're going to do is just have y'all make a nomination, and then if there's more than one candidate, we'll pass out, pieces of paper for y'all to vote on, and then we'll do the same thing for vice chair. So, do I have any nominations for chair?
Do we know the status of Bob's health at present? Is he,
I don't
Should-
know. Have you heard anything?
I haven't heard any indication that he's not still in a struggling situation.
Yeah.
Right, I agree.
So
That's true.
I'll make a motion to nominate Mr. Savory as chair.
Okay. Great. Any other nominations? Otherwise, this will be real easy. Okay. Everybody say aye, or I guess raise hands if you are going to vote for.
we do need a vice chair
Yeah, but-
because Mr. Savory is out of town occasionally on
Yeah.
business.
Of course,
so-
we'll do that next. We just have to have an official vote.
That's fine.
Everybody who's in favor of Mr. Savory as our new chair?
Yes.
Okay, that's unanimous. Now, do we have any nominations for vice chair?
I nominate Paul.
Paul?
Wait. Yeah, from the
Okay. You accept the nomination?
I don't think so. But I would like to nominate LaToya.
Do you accept the nomination?
I accept the current nomination.
You sure?
Yes. If
I'm
I'm,
only
if
asking
I,
her, because we had a conversation about this before, but,
if I'm unable to fulfill the duties, I guess it would be appropriate, I would notify everybody, and then another vote could be taken for a new vice chair.
okay.
Is that?
Yeah, yeah. You mean like on a permanent basis?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
We move approval.
Sorry?
I said we move approval.
Yeah, does anybody
Not so
have another
fast.
nomination for vice chair? Okay, everybody in favor for LaToya as vice chair?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was easy. We don't have to take a vote.
I would like to make one other motion if it's possible. I have had this conversation with Amy. I would like, and I don't know how we do this, but I would like to have y'all note a meeting to discuss the continuing issue of notification involving staff, the city attorney who's involved in the Woodley matter, and us. And let's come up with how we best need to deal with it. I have my ideas. I know she has things she's already done. But I would prefer not to do that at the end of the next meeting, although that's highly possible. But I would like to deal with it in March.
Well, I know that she is working on that, and, I mean, preservation staff has been understaffed and really
I mean,
backed
y'all
up.
lost 2 weeks.
She's doing everything she can, and she's actually ill today, so I'll just have to defer that conversation to when she's back in the circle, unless you have anything to add.
This year, staff has taken some good steps to deal with it, but I mean, I've been on this commission since February, and we've had 6 of these and 2 today. We got to deal with it, guys. Well, let's don't delay getting together.
Does somebody want to move to adjourn?
I guess we need a motion to adjourn.
Chair has asked for a motion to adjourn.
Anyone?
Tom,
Anyone?
you ready to call for a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Motion, so moved.
Second?
Thank you.